Dyslexia. What is it? What are the myths? And are there strategies to overcome it? This topic is very dear to my heart since I do have a close family member that has this diagnosis. This can be very heavy on the parent and of course on the child. And with that, let me introduce myself. My name is Dawn Battaglia. I'm with Sunrise Reading Tutoring Service. It's a one-on-one online tutoring service that's delivered conveniently in your own home for children that are early readers and struggling readers. I have over 20 years of experience and I'm certified in special education and early childhood education. And first I'd like to mention that I'm going to be referring to two books today. One by Dr. Sunrise Reading in the Brain, and the second one, Mark Seidenberg, Language at the Speed of Sight. Dyslexia. So what is it? In some school districts, they may just label the child of having a reading disability or a learning disability, but dyslexia is more specific. It's actually now believed that children with dyslexia have a genetic difference in that of a typical child in the way that they read written language, perceive it, and express it. Dr. Sunrise is a French cognitive neuroscientist, and he's been studying how people read, and he's been graphing different imaging of how language is perceived, how we read, and trying to understand that cognitive wiring. But with that, he noticed a specific difference with those with dyslexia. So this is actually just adds more research in believing that dyslexia is a genetic disorder. So with dyslexia, it makes me think also of autism. They're very different. They're totally different diagnoses. But what I like to talk about with autism is that it's a huge spectrum, a huge umbrella term. And on one side of it, you have a child that's Asperger's. And if you met that child, you may not even know they have autism. And then you have the other side, which is very extreme, which a child is nonverbal. And as they become an adult, will always need assistance in living. Well, with dyslexia, it is a broad, in the sense, this umbrella term that a child may have a couple areas where they slightly are having struggles with compared to large areas where they have large deficits in. And let me explain more about that. So these are areas that dyslexia may affect. Again, why I say it's that umbrella term, because it may affect all of these areas, some of these areas, and the severity of each area may be different. So the first one would be phonology. It could affect the way that the child's doing their blends, or they could be leaving out a sound. The second one is reading aloud, their fluency and articulation, orthography, the misspelling of words, the working memory, how they can retrieve a conversation or a passage being read, and language and vocabulary. So again, as you can see, it's a very complex diagnosis because there's a lot of different areas. So the challenge with dyslexia, according to Dr. Mark Seidenberg, is that when a child has it young, they may display a lot of the same symptoms as that of a typical child, because as the process of reading, children are figuring out blends and they could be messing that up a little bit, or understanding the word they read, or articulating that specific sound. So with that, a child may not get that dyslexia diagnosis, but what happens if they don't have early intervention? It usually goes on until they're about 10 or 11, and this is when it shows up, because at that stage, they're reading chapter books, there's a lot of comprehension that's happening, or they're doing read alouds, and that's when it's picked up. But if you find, and as a parent, if you know that your child is struggling and they're not getting that diagnosis, I would recommend just get early intervention, or if you need to, have a tutor and just start the process right away, because then by the time they're 10 or 11, some of the things that they would be having challenges with then can be picked up and can help and be corrected at that younger age. So here are some myths about dyslexia. One is that it's just seeing mirror image. They're flipping their B's and their D's, their P's and their Q's. At a young age, many children do this. Many typical children do this. So if this is the only thing that you're seeing in your child, most likely they're just going to grow out of it. The second one is their cognitive ability, their IQ. Well, many children that have dyslexia have a very high IQ. They're very intelligent. Remember that dyslexia is believed to be a genetic difference in that of a child that is a typical reader. It affects the way they perceive and are able to express written language. And then the third one is environment. And yes, environment can affect how a child reads or their development. However, if they have a diagnosis of dyslexia Again, because it's believed it's genetic, it's the way that the wiring is for a child when they're reading and perceiving language, and environment has nothing to do with that. Dyslexia, can a child overcome it? Well, a child can't overcome dyslexia since it's believed to be genetic, and the genetics have to do with the way the child perceives written language. However, there are great strategies that can get a child reading, and then in the future they can have great academic success. They can go on to college and have the career that they want. So here are some strategies to help. So in general, I would say that can help your child with strategies is I like to, of course, every child should be doing phonics, comprehension just in small bites, even if you have to start with just the sentence. Start with the subject of the sentence, just depending on that child. Longer time for them to get an assignment done. Color coding their spelling words or their blends. These are just some ways that I think could be very helpful, or I know that are helpful for children that have dyslexia. Well, I hope you found this video helpful. Please subscribe, give it a thumbs up. I do have another video about teaching your child blends, and that's just with the consonant and the short vowel sound, and it's just a real effective way to get them started. Well, thank you for joining me today, and best to you on your reading journey. Please check out my website, and if you have questions, you can comment on there, reach out to me, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have and help you on your reading journey with your child.